You guys doing well, and welcome to today's edition of the London Session Open. Today is February 25th, 2020, and it's 9:42 a.m. in London when we're doing this market update. We're going to take a look at the markets that we usually do here on Investing Cube and as well on the ATFX YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe to the videos. If you're new to this, we're going to do over the next few minutes, we're going to talk a bit about what's going on in the markets. We do cover a lot of various articles here in the morning. But what we do here, we try to sort of grab my view on the market and what I think is happening and trying to help you understand the markets better and hopefully trade better. So that's what we're going to be doing here. So don't forget to subscribe as well. I'm available on Twitter on AlexFX00. I usually send a message out when I'm live. So markets, what is it all about? It's about this. So I'm at this website called La Repubblica. It's an Italian site. And it's all about the situation in Italy and how number of viruses here have soared. So the latest reading is for the numbers pretty much being around 229 according to this map here. And what's interesting here is that yesterday the number of viruses, confirmed cases, was about 150. So from pretty much yesterday until today, there's been increase of 54%. And this is very typical. This is what we've seen before. We saw that when we had this situation in China, when the numbers grew very quickly. We also have, of course, the problem in South Korea. We also have the problems in Iran. But we're now starting to, they did like a test, I think it was on Tenerife. There was an Italian tourist that had the virus, and now they're testing about 100 people or so in that hotel. So that is causing the markets to slide the way they are. And in particular, if you look at something like the let's take a look at the Italian stock market. So it's called the FTSE MIB. You can see here how this is end of day, by the way. You can see how the market from its yearly high, Italian market is down by 8%, very strong decline. And then you have things as well like the Spanish stock market, which is also close to let's see. Which is Spain is obviously very close to Italy. France is also very close to Italy. I mean, Italy's in the middle there, really. But you can see some aggressive sell-offs here. This is Spanish stock market. From its high is down with about 6.85%. This, of course, has influenced things like the FTSE 100. It influenced the DAX. It influenced quite a lot of markets. And this is the FTSE 100, which is trading within a range. And the question now going forward for the FTSE, for the DAX, and for many of the other markets, will this be contained? Most likely, I think, now there's definitely a panic, in Italy. I have a friend of mine, he lives in Milano, and he was taking pictures of his supermarket. So it's not just some random guy on the internet, it's a friend of mine. He was taking photos and literally let's see if I can find them. I'm not sure I can use them, but I don't think he's gonna be too upset. Where is he gonna find it here? I don't log into Facebook that often. Let's see here. But effectively, it says mobile uploads, and you can see here how sort of the meat section is pretty much empty, and everybody's pretty much hoarding. He also sent me some other photo of the pasta section, and it was empty as well. Everybody took all the pasta, and this is from yesterday. So it's definitely a bit of a panic here. Now, the question is, how is this going to continue to grow? So the growth from yesterday until today was about 50%, and I reckon because of the panic mode, there's gonna be far more tests. They're gonna shut down the cities, and they're done shut down some cities already. So we can have an acceleration in the number of growths. But as soon as this starts to taper off, in China, obviously, it took some time. But as soon as the numbers start to taper off, I think we can probably see some stabilization in the markets. And what that means for something like the FTSE 100 is that the FTSE 100 is just above support, above the August low, right? So will it go down maybe slightly below and trigger some stops? Yeah, of course it could do so. But I reckon if we trade above this level and we, or maybe we'll say it goes down over the next day or so, like a move to downside, but then goes back up again. If you start to see the growth rate drop, then that's when I would start to get interested. Because what's happening is that remember in case of China, the growth rate was about 35% for many days, but then when it started to go closer to 20, then the market had, around that time, the market had actually already peaked. And effectively the same thing should happen now. So over the next week or so, then the number of increases, confirmed cases, should hopefully peak. The problem is, of course, what happened last time is now we had it contained in China, and now it came to Italy, right? And now if it continues to spread to other European countries, then obviously we can forget about potentially buying here. At that point, what's going to happen is we're probably going to continue to trade lower. In the case of the German DAX, we're just above support here as well. And again, if we didn't know nothing about the coronavirus, well, we're just above support. Remember here, this is the last time we looked at this and we were driven lower by the coronavirus. At that time, when it was just about China primarily, the market slid with 5.59%. And I said around, and the thing is different though, is that the corona number, so the virus from the virus in China had already risen over this period. And then around this time on the 4th of February, so when we're here already, around that time, the number of growth, the daily percentage change had diminished in China. So we could pretty much be in a very similar situation. The only difference here is that it's maybe a bit too recent. Maybe we're one day too early, or sorry, a few days too early. It really depends on what happens today. If the growth rate is less than 20% or around 20%, then maybe that could be the beginning of something. So as for the DAX here, pay close attention to this level. It is interesting. And then you actually have the 200-day moving average is just down here around the original breakout points, and that could be interesting as well. In something like the S&P 500, we're also above an interesting support level. And as long as trade above 3,204, this is going to be a bullish uptrend. In worst case, if the market gets more of a panic, and then you got the 200-day moving average, and it's down here, and that is around the December low. And I did an article about this yesterday, where I talk about the, let me see if I can find. Did an article where I talk about the CNN Fear and Greed Index, and this is the CNN Fear and Greed Index, and you can see here when I did this, it was around 33 yesterday. When we bottomed out in October, the market was down here, around the 920 level. So the CNN Fear and Greed Index is not that far away from oversold levels where the market will potentially bounce. Last time it bounced, the market was down here, and we had a crazy rally. Of course, the reason for that crazy rally is because of all the money that the Federal Reserve is pumping to the system. Yeah, the repo rates. That is what changed here from pretty much September. They started to push money into the system. So, but it's not only that. The CNN Fear and Greed Index has been around for a long time, and I used it many times before. Now, if it doesn't hold here, it might plummet to even lower levels. And of course, if we have a proper down move recession, it will be lingering around the lows for some time. So what I'm trying to say to you guys here is that maybe this, hopefully this can go down a little bit more, but if for example the S&P does take out the low, might go down a little bit lower to 3,069. But I think from that level, it will be a really interesting situation. The market would be down with 10% here, and I think here around this level could be interesting. It's very seldom the market trades aggressively bearish. Like here, the market traded down with 20%, so obviously that's not unknown. And of course, when you do have a recession, but like when you have a proper recession like we had in 2009, then that's when the market obviously declines to 60%. You don't want to be long at that point. But what I reckon is that maybe this will go down. Maybe we'll spend some time around 3,100, but as long as we're about 3,069, then it's going to be bullish. So that is what I find interesting. You have as well crude oil markets. Crude oil markets, so we said a few weeks ago, look to buy here if it's to go upwards. It did go up pretty much at the first resistance level, which could have definitely been used to book some profits there. The market slid below, and it did trade below my trend defining level. The market yesterday was just sliding lower and lower and lower, and I think around 330 or so, it traded below my trend defining level. So I'm more of a neutral now. But I think if we look at it from a big picture perspective, if we're realistic here, if the situation is contained in Italy and in South Korea, but in particular Italy, I think that's what's the worrying, because Italy is around the corner. It effectively is around the corner, right? Then that if it's contained there, I think that will relax the markets quite a lot. And if that indeed happens, and we're trading about 49.21, then it will be probably going to go upwards. On the other hand, if we trade below that level, then this will be a recompletion of this big rectangle, and that big rectangle has a target of 37.29. So if it doesn't hold, then breaking the low could be really interesting, because we could probably go down to the 2018 low, and then maybe we'll reach the pattern target at 37.29. So it's a very interesting time right now. As for gold prices, they come down quite strongly, which makes perfect sense, right? We rallied a lot, we traded higher, and then after these sort of rallies, people want to take some profits. Now, I'm struggling a bit to figure out exactly where to put my trend defining level, but you have 1597. Let me just hide this. 1597 here. So you have a little bit of support here. And if you take fib from the very low to the very high, you can see this is the third fib. So it could trade down to the third fib, but it should not really trade down to the third fib. So I'm going to be bullish above that level, which is pretty much the same level I said yesterday. And then between 1623 and that level, I think people could potentially buy. Now you can see that people have already bought here at the first fib. And maybe what we could do is that it could potentially be that it has stabilized there. So it might do something like this. And we could potentially, if we see this, if I see that we have another low here, then I'm just going to increase this to that level. And then on the second or third day, when it goes down again, we could buy. But for now, I'm still looking at this level here being my entry, or for being bullish. Ideally, it just goes down and then quickly bounces up, and then sort of bounces off the first fib and then goes upwards. So I wouldn't worry too much. It will definitely consolidate, I think so. Unless, of course, if we see a 100% increase in the number of cases in Italy, then that could be a big warning sign. So as for the currency markets, they're obviously a bit dull. So, I mean, most of the action is now in gold, commodities, and stock markets. You do have some action in the yen, which we're going to look at as well. So this is the euro versus the dollar, and the euro versus the dollar is going upwards here. You might say, why is it going upwards if the situation is bad in Italy? Well, I think what's happening here a little bit is, firstly, the euro was very oversold against many different currencies. Remember, we turned bearish up here at 111. So I think we needed to have that move anyway, a bit of a corrective move. The second thing is I think there might be some repatriation flows. So you have Europeans that have invested in the US and places like that, and now they want their money back. And that, I think, could support the euro. The euro, in some occasions, because of its low interest rates, will act like a funding currency, a bit like the yen. And that sometimes strengthens the euro. I think here, this can go a bit higher. Maybe 109, I think, would be very reasonable. I think we can push this down a little bit, 109, and then see maybe if we can turn bearish here. I'm going to remain bearish as long as we're below 109.86. Is GBP. GBP is going upwards. I haven't really been following the news this morning, but obviously something got everybody excited here. I think here, on the 4 hour, I'm going to continue to be bearish for now. The trend is mildly bearish below 130.68, and there's no real reason to change the bias here. This is dollar yen. Now, dollar yen came down strongly. So the whole gain it had here, which I found a little bit out of the blue, even though I was bullish from a technical perspective, but from a fundamental perspective, when I was speaking with people, they were telling me, oh, it's because people are afraid that they're not going to do the Olympics. But again, in times of crisis, the yen strengthens and doesn't weakens. So that's why I found that argument. I didn't really understand it. In any case, this is the buyer if you want to look at this, and I will be bullish above 110.29, which is this level here. I don't remember exactly the levels I told you guys yesterday because I lost some of my I lost my analysis actually, but around this level. Now, given the situation with the crisis, you know, unless you're really optimistic, you wouldn't necessarily be buying here. That's what I would have done, and I think that's also the same thing we said yesterday. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a bit down today, but there's not too much happening here. Like a lot of the other cryptos are a bit trading sideways or bearish already. So this is sort of consolidating now. We don't really have any pattern right now. And let's see if it wants to go upwards. We still have this pattern here that still has a target, which is not met. So maybe just be like a corrective flag, something like this. So we can still potentially go upwards, but I'm finding it a bit difficult to have a very strong view here. I think maybe if we take out something like 10,303, then maybe that could mark the resumption. And you have other stuff. This is Ripple. So you have your inverse head and shoulders here, which worked really well. On the other hand, you also have a normal head and shoulders here, which does suggest that, you know, we could potentially trade down with about 7 cents per coin, which would effectively take you down to something like the 18 level. So it's a bit difficult here as well. I mean, it's not difficult, but we're dealing with a downtrend. Okay, let's see if you guys have any questions. Okay, so we got a question. What do I think about the triple top and the Nikkei? Okay, we can check that out. We have as well True Invention here. Good morning. We have Vincenzo and we have Maurizio as well. And True Invention is asking about the dollar Mexican peso. Okay, so let's take a look at the Nikkei. So the Nikkei, I think I did check it out myself this morning. So this is the Nikkei, this is the daily chart. So it's stuck within this big range. I find it a bit difficult to, I don't find it difficult, it's just stuck in the range. Well, what's interesting actually is that up until recently, he was creating a inverse head and shoulders, which was looking like this. You had the high, then you got your left head, and it was doing like that. So I was actually waiting for this to go upwards, but it never triggered. Instead, we had that move. So it's definitely 1, 2, 3 highs, and we took out the low here, really, down here. It's not, can we call it a rectangle maybe? That could be easier. Yeah, I think that could be easier. Sometimes it's difficult to say exactly what you're looking at, but you have this distance here, and between high and low, and maybe that's what we're gonna get when we have a bit of a more of a bearish slide here. It could easily, of course, just rally upwards, but I guess as long as you trade below 24,095, this is gonna be a bearish market. We also got a question about, I think it was dollar Mexican peso. This is dollar Mexican peso, and the Mexican peso is going up. So you have a bit of fear in the emerging markets. South African rand as well is going upwards. Just give me a second. Sorry about that. I just had to sneeze. Here, I don't know really what's going on. Some sort of a breakout. There's no real pattern here. It's just going upwards. Obviously, you have this sort of pattern, so maybe I'll go up a little bit more, but this is way too choppy for me to have any sort of opinion on. You can, if you want to, of course, always go in the short term, but I think this is very difficult. It's really random here. I think it was Nicholas on the here on Investing Cube that did head and shoulders or some sort of triangle. This is some sort of a triangle. Well, this pattern is it's not active anymore. Guess we sort of, well, Yeah, I wouldn't really deal with this one too much, but you had a break here and it's going aggressively upwards. I wouldn't really do nothing here. It's very difficult to say what's gonna happen. I prefer, simple patterns. The S&P is it creating, is it gonna create head and shoulders, maybe head, left, maybe right shoulder. German DAX, I know it's not a rectangle, but take out support. We can probably trade much lower. So that's what I would focus on. Okay, it's 10 o'clock and I have a meeting I need to rush to. Some guys waiting for me. So I want to thank you so much all for joining me this morning, and I would like to see you guys tomorrow around the same time here on the Investing Cube and ATFX YouTube channel. Have a good day. Don't forget to like the videos and don't forget to share. Thank you.